session 11 of the 27th Sustainable Development Conference titled Pink Together, Stronger Forever, Nobody Fights Alone. SDPI not only focuses on sustainable development in your economic, environmental, and social issues, but at the same time works for the health and well-being of populations across Pakistan as well. Our department, Center of Health Policy and Innovation, particularly prioritizes women health because just last year we conducted an awareness session on one of the most serious health conditions that are being faced by women, and that is cervical cancer. So this year we decided to focus on another main concern for female reproductive health, and that is breast cancer. If we talk about some figures, breast cancer is the second most common cancer worldwide. According to WHO, there were 2.3 million women diagnosed with breast cancer and 670,000 deaths reported in 2020. There was also a very interesting correlation that was found between breast cancer and your Human Development Index. Briefly summarizing it, the incidence of breast cancer is higher in your high Human Development Index countries due to better detection, but the mortality rate is lower because of superior healthcare systems. In contrast, in lower HDI countries, the diagnosis rates are lower, but mortality rates are high because of lack of access to your care and treatment options. If we talk about Pakistan, breast cancer has now become a very growing burden in recent times, posing a significant cause for concern. We have actually the highest incidence of breast cancer in Asia, where out of 9 women, at least 1 woman is at risk for being diagnosed with breast cancer somewhere during her lifetime. And also it was revealed by WHO that around 90,000 cases of breast cancer are diagnosed in Pakistan annually, out of which 40,000 occur in deaths due to late detection. Breast cancer is one of the diseases to which a whole month is dedicated to celebrate its awareness. And that is the month of October, which is also known as Pink October. Throughout this month, there are a multitude of events that take place, fundraising, walks, your educational seminars, in which people around the world adopt the color pink to promote awareness, education, and support for this issue and engage communities in this regard as well. The purpose of this chat is also public health education to women about the signs and symptoms of the risk factors of breast cancer, helping them clear up all the misconceptions that they have about breast cancer, and talk about the whole journey from your diagnosis to the treatment. And for this purpose, we have with us a very special guest, Dr. Mariam Iftikhar, who is currently a consultant surgeon at Rifa International University, Islamabad, and is in charge of the breast clinic there as well. She has done her MBBS from Rawalpindi Medical College with further specialization in surgery. She herself has been a part of many of the breast cancer awareness campaigns that are being carried out in the last 5 to 6 years, and she was part of these campaigns in renowned institutes such as your universities like Rifa University, NUST, as well as the Holy Family Hospital. So thank you for taking time out of your busy routine and joining us in this discussion, ma'am.
Assalamu alaikum, Khadija. Thank you for this warm welcome. So a few things that I'd just like to add to what she has already told us about breast cancer is that, remember, women are the bedrock for healthy families and societies, and only healthier women can contribute to a more productive society. And looking at these alarming numbers, I think we must realize that for the past few decades, our healthcare system has failed women. Until recently, that we have started, introducing these awareness programs and campaigns in order for us to pick and detect the early cases. Because again, the bottom line or the goal of this program is to pick, detect the early cases and to help them effectively cure the cancer. And that is how I'm ready to help, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much.
No problem at all, ma'am. Very well said. Okay, so now we're going to start with some questions, and each questions are going to cover some important themes. So let's first talk about the risk factors of breast cancer and the general diagnosis. So first of all, what can you tell us about this disease and how is it manifested? More importantly, what are the age groups among which it is most commonly found?
Okay, so these are the very common questions. Thank you for asking them, Khadija, because all the young girls who are watching this out there, I can understand that these are the basic questions that need to be addressed in order for us to tackle this issue of breast cancer. So, starting off, how is the disease manifested and what are the risk factors? Remember that in 90% of the cases, it is going to present or manifest itself as a lump. So, if you see any abnormality, any asymmetry that you've not regularly observed, that can be a sign of breast cancer. It can present in a multitude of signs and symptoms like any blood discharge from the nipples, any presence of lump in your axilla or your armpits, any pain, redness, change of the skin texture of your breast or the chest wall. All of this can be a manifestation of breast cancer. Then again, the last question that she asked me is what are the age groups? So it was earlier said that it is a disease of older age groups, and I do not negate it completely. Yes, after the age of 50 or 60 years, the prevalence is significantly increased. But then again, even in my career, I've seen a lot of young girls come to me, a lot of unmarried girls, a lot of girls who've recently been married. So remember, you cannot basically fit it in a box that this is a disease of, let's say, 50 plus years. No, it is not. Even if you have a lump at the age of 30 years, please come see a doctor, because this can be a breast cancer as well. So the basic signs and symptoms that I've already told you should never be neglected. Apart from that, other risk factors that have been studied across, basically more so in the Western population, are, for example, early menarche, late menopause, the women being nulliparous, which means she doesn't have any children, or sometimes if she's not breastfed her children, or if she has a positive family history, which means the disease runs in the family, unfortunately. So if your mother had it or your grandmother had it, there are chances that you're going to have it as well. So again, this is one of the most significant risk factors that has been studied so far. I hope that clarifies the question.
Yes, thank you for the explanation, ma'am. So the next question is, what is the most frequent and effective screening method for diagnosing breast cancer in its earliest stages?
Okay, again, one of the most important questions. Khadija, remember, what I recommend, what I suggest is something that can be done at home, that is readily available to everyone out there, that doesn't cost you a penny. That is self-examination. So you fix one time each month, every month, preferably 5 to 6 days after the cycle, and you do the self-examination yourself. It's not going to cost you anything. It's not going to take a lot of time, but it is going to help you detect something that can go ignored and can manifest itself in a very cruel or ugly form. Which means that self-examination is the first and foremost step, and we cannot ignore it. Moving forward, obviously, if you've gone to a doctor, you know, and you've noticed some changes, what they recommend or prescribe is what I do is ultrasound and mammography. Remember, there are no needles involved, so you're just going to get an ultrasound done if you're less than 40 years of age. And if you're more than 40 years of age, we're going to send you for a mammogram. The good news with these screening tests is that they're available throughout the country. You can go see a radiologist, you can go see a doctor, they're going to prescribe them. And they're present almost in all major cities of the country. So, and they're not very heavy on the pocket as well. So these are the early screening tests that we do generally.
All right, ma'am. Okay, so the next question is something that I wondered myself as well. If we talk about the young females in our society, there is a particular disorder known as polycystic ovarian syndrome that is now becoming extremely common. Do you think that can be a possible risk factor for breast cancer in the later stages of life?
Okay, so Khadija, several meta-analyses have been done, systematic reviews have been done for this particular association of polycystic ovarian syndrome with breast cancer, and no such association has been linked as of now. But again, the consequences of polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is, obesity, your hormonal disbalance, your metabolic syndrome, diabetes mellitus, all of this basically are also the risk factors for breast cancer. So you cannot basically generalize the rule that if you have polycystic ovarian syndrome, you can never have breast cancer, or if you have breast cancer, you can never have polycystic ovarian syndrome. These are basically two different spectrum of the diseases, of different diseases basically. So if you have polycystic ovarian syndrome, doesn't mean you are, off the hook and you are not supposed to do self-examination. No, you are. And if you have polycystic ovarian syndrome, if you feel a lump in the breast, you have to see a doctor, because nobody can tell you whether it is cancerous or not. I hope that answers your questions.
Yes, absolutely, ma'am. Okay, and another thing that was actually quite shocking to me was that is it true that breast cancer can also occur in the male population?
Yes. So 99% of the time, it's going to be in the females, it's going to manifest itself in the females. But then 1% of the times, there are incidents of breast cancer in male patients as well. So you see a lot of breast cancer awareness campaigns with a lot of females. I urge them to involve their male colleagues as
Exactly.
well, because 1%, for that 1%, for that one male who is a victim of breast cancer, for him it is going to be 100%. So we have to save each life. That is the goal.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, now we're going to actually build up some kind of a scenario where we must highlight the journey from diagnosis to treatment.
Okay.
So, suppose there is a woman who is between the ages of 30 and 40 and she is diagnosed with breast cancer. So, I actually have three questions related to this. Number one, what is the plan of action and to whom should she go for medical consultation immediately? Second, what are the stages of the disease and how does it progress? And three, what treatments are available for it in Pakistan?
Okay, that's a very nice way of putting it out there. So we'll take it one step at a time. So the first question is, how is it going to manifest, and then uh, how is she going to get herself diagnosed? So again, like I already told you, you're going to go see a doctor. So we live in an underdeveloped country. We know that surgeons are not available throughout the country. You might be living in some periphery, in some village where you can't see a surgeon, but at least go see a doctor. You must have a doctor somewhere in your region or in your locality. What I suggest is you go see that doctor, and they're going to at least tell you whether the lump or whatever the symptoms or the signs are, whether they are cancerous or not. So, for example, you look like your signs and symptoms look like they're malignant or they're suspicious. So, what's going to happen is ideally you should go to a one-stop breast clinic. In Pindi, Islamabad, there are many one-stop breast clinics available throughout the major government setups and the private setups as well, and where they offer you to get yourself examined by a breast surgeon, which is the first step of the triple assessment that we do in order to diagnose the cases of breast cancer. So, when you see a surgeon, they're going to take a complete history, they're going to examine you, and they're going to pick up the suspicious or the important signs and symptoms, like what is the if there is any lump, what is the dimension of the lump, whether there's any discharge, what about the armpits, whether the axilla is clear or not, which is the first step. Then you move forward to the second step, which means we are going to send you for an ultrasound or a mammogram, where the radiologist come into the scenario. And once you get your ultrasound or your mammogram done, depending on the age limit, we can get the clear picture of what is going on inside. The architectural distortion, if there is any, if the lymph nodes, other small swellings which are not, palpable through the hand or visible to the eye, they can also be picked. So once your radiological investigations are complete, and we are suspecting that there is a malignancy in there, which means that there is a cancerous lump, then we're going to take a biopsy. Again, the surgeons can perform the biopsy. You can go to a radiologist and they can do it for you. So, and they're available throughout the city. So a biopsy is done and a tissue diagnosis is obtained. That is when, if you follow each of these three steps, there is almost negligible chance of missing out on a breast cancer. So if you're suspecting a patient, or if you're a patient yourself and you're suspecting that my lump is cancerous, you have to go through all of these three steps. You miss out on a single step and you can miss the diagnosis completely, because not all cancers present in the same manner, not all cancers can be picked up through the ultrasound. So each and every step has its own significance. So coming to the second question, which is what are the stages of the disease? So roughly, to tell a layman about what exactly are the stages, is we have divided the cancer into 4 stages. And just to give you a very brief overview, the first, stage 1 and stage 2 are generally the earlier forms of the disease or the early stages of the breast cancer. The stage 3 is basically somewhat, I would say it's locally advanced, or I'd say it has involved the breast tissue and the skin, and sometimes the axilla as well. Not sometimes, actually, all of the times, axilla as well. So yes, it is, it is an advanced stage, but it is still curable. And then stage 4 is basically when the cancer has metastasized everywhere. Like it can go erode your liver, it can go into the lungs, it can go into the bones, and it can go into the brain as well. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of patients, especially from the periphery, where it's still a stigma to go see a surgeon for examination of the breast cancer. I've seen patients who present to us with things like, femur fractures, like, long bone fractures. And they would come to us and tell us that the patient also has some lump. And if a female is available, we are going to get her examined. Otherwise, she's going to go home with just the treatment for the fracture. And it was basically the cancer which was there in the bones. Similarly, I've seen patients who have presented in psych wards, psychiatry wards, with all kinds of hallucinations and vasovagal syncopes and blackouts, and turned out it was breast cancer, which was basically is now in the brain as well. That is when we cannot do anything, and that is, by the way, worldwide. So if you're presenting to us with a metastatic cancer, thinking that the treatment is not available over here, and I'm going to fly to Dubai or probably US and get myself treated, that's not possible, because that is what the aim of this talk is. We want to pick you in the stage 1 and stage 2 and get get you some treatment and get you help you get rid of this cancer, rather than ignoring the signs and symptoms and letting it advance to stage 4 where nobody can do anything for you. Then moving on to the treatments. Okay, so things keep slipping my mind because I've just come here from my OT. Okay, sorry. So moving forward, so then we're going to talk about treatments again, like I've told you. So if it is stage 1 and stage 2, treatments are easier. They it's not exactly a generalized treatment plan that I can tell you right now. But what happens is, when a patient comes to us with the diagnosis of breast cancer, there's a whole set of tumor board meetings which are arranged for the patient. The radiologist, the histopathologist, oncologist, breast surgeons, general surgeons, all of them are on board. And then we tailor the treatment for each and every patient. Like for instance, there are some forms of cancer that we would just go in, do upfront surgery, and come back, and the patient is good to go home. Then there are other types of cancers which are very aggressive, which have very high recurrence rates. So what we do is, we probably sometimes offer a chemotherapy before surgery as well. So again, treatment is tailored according to the patient's diagnosis and the type of the cancer. Also remember that there are several forms of treatment. For example, one of them is surgery, because you're talking to a surgeon, so surgery is one of them. And then there is chemotherapy, there is radiotherapy, there is immunosuppressant therapy, there's a lot of hormonal agents that are available, and biological agents are kicking in now as well. So many treatment options are available. So we are going to study your case in the tumor board meeting. We are going to come up with a plan which is tailored as per your cancer, to make sure that not only you get rid of it, but it doesn't come back. So you live a healthy, normal life, just like all other girls of your age. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, ma'am, that was actually a very detailed explanation of the whole journey. Okay, since we are talking about treatment, so there was one thing that I wanted to ask, that there are many people who turn to, you can say, alternative forms of medication and treatment. So, what would you say regarding that, and how accurate is that?
Okay, so that's a very tricky question, Khadija, because I live in Pakistan. I do my practice here in Pakistan. So I cannot, if a patient comes to you and they tell you they're going to a spiritual healer, and you tell them just don't go to them, they would rather not come to you again. So that is the situation out there. Because I am not a spiritual healer myself, I cannot claim that whatever they're doing is not right, or whatever they're doing is never going to help you. Because again, then the religion comes in, the cultural values come in, and you cannot deny, being a Muslim, that yes, the word of God has a significant impact on how you're going to get the treatment, and how good your willpower is going to be. But then again, what I recommend, or what I generally do for my patients, is I tell them that you can continue with this spiritual healer and that form of treatment as well, but just don't lose to follow up. Come to us, let us help you in this journey and help you get rid of it. And maybe that is one way of dealing with the situation, but to each their own. That's what I generally
So,
tell
like,
everyone.
at the same time, respect their beliefs,
Yes.
but
Yes,
along with
exactly,
medical checkups
exactly.
as well.
Because if you start arguing with them, you are not going to win that argument. You are just losing the patient. So right now, life over everything. So you let them believe what they're believing, and just help them in that journey and their treatment plan.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you. Do you have any figures regarding the current survival rate of breast cancer in Pakistan?
Asking figures from a surgeon. Okay. So generally, again, the figures are related to the stages of the disease. So if it is an early stage, for example, it is stage 1, stage 2, there a lot of prognostic index available. Again, it depends on the patient as well. For instance, the patient is 30 years old, she has no comorbids, that means she has no other disease. She's good to go, her health otherwise is fine. So definitely good chances of survival. But generally it is said for stage 1 and stage 2, it's around 85 to 90%. And then stage 3 is around 60 to 75%. And then stage 4, we all know that that is metastatic disease. That is when it has, taken all of over your body.
All right, ma'am. Okay. So,
Just keep that in mind, that the aim is, if you have a lump, see a doctor, get yourself treated. The treatment is available, the cure is possible, but only in the earlier stages of the disease.
yes, absolutely. Okay. So, if we talk about some, side effects of the treatment, so what would you say? What are the side effects? And in particular, there are many women who think that such treatments can, lead to some problems in their reproductive health or reduce the fertility prospects for them in the future. So, what would you say
Okay,
regarding
yeah,
that?
that is again a very important question that I'd like to clarify. That, again, whatever treatment you have been offered, for example, you've been told that you are a good candidate for surgery. So there are two types of surgery, many types of surgery that are available, but roughly we categorize them as two types. One of them is the breast conserving surgery, which means, in other words, we're just going to take out the lump. The other form is when the whole breast tissue has to be removed, because if the cancer is involved, the all of the quadrants of the breast, then obviously the whole organ has to be removed in order for us to get rid of it. So obviously that, in other word, means that you're going to lose one organ of your body. And I do realize that that's a big deal for most of us in any part of the world. But then what I tell my patients is, your life takes precedence over your organs. Like, we offer amputations to the patients who come to us after trauma or diabetic foot, and we tell them that their life is more important than their limb right now. So we can help you with a prosthesis or an implant, even in breast surgery cases afterwards as well. Yes, in Pakistan as well. But right now we need to get rid of the cancer first. The second is the cases in which you've been offered, for example, let's say chemotherapy or radiotherapy or some form of hormonal agents. Yes, they do have their own sets of side effects with them. You're going to face a lot of nausea and alopecia and headaches and vomiting and all of that. But that is important, because why is chemotherapy? Because we cannot simply remove chemotherapy from the regime or the treatment regime just because the patient cannot handle some nausea. We're going to give you some agents to control that nausea and vomiting as well, but we have to get rid of cancer first. That is the goal of the treatment. Secondly, yes, to answer that question, fertility rates are, in cases where you're just offered surgery, um, and you don't need chemo and radiotherapy, you go on and live normal life right after surgery. Nobody is going to stop you from anything. You can, get married, have kids, live a healthy, happy life. But in some forms of some regimes of chemotherapy, it's generally advised that for the first 2 years, right after the treatment, the doctors advise not to conceive or plan your family right away. You wait for, let's say, 2 to 5 years, and then you start your family. So that's about it. But it generally doesn't stop you from living a normal life, any form of treatment.
Okay, understood, ma'am. Okay, so in reference to this, if, for example, a pregnant woman is diagnosed with breast cancer, how would she go about the treatment, and what can the treatment have? Can the treatment have any negative effects on her fetus or something?
Okay, so again, a very interesting question for a place like ours, our part of the world, where, mashallah, we are ranking on top probably when it comes to the population boom. Okay, so yeah, one in 3,000 pregnancies are at risk of developing breast cancer. So if you're feeling a lump, it is not because you're pregnant. It can be breast cancer that has manifested right in the middle of your pregnancy because of the increased hormonal exposure. So you cannot ignore it. You're going to follow the same steps of the triple assessment. But what we do is, for example, you've come to us in the first trimester or the second trimester. Obviously, we cannot offer you chemotherapy and radiotherapy because they're completely contraindicated, and they're not good. Not just good; they're going to cause abnormalities in the fetus. So that's what we don't do. We do offer surgery, but it has its own significant risk of the intrauterine death of the baby because the surgery is going to be done in the general anesthesia. And similarly, sometimes we have to wait for the delivery to be done, and then we can offer you the radiotherapy and the hormonal therapy. So my advice would be, if you're planning to start a family, if you're planning to conceive, please get yourself screened first, because that way you're not going to help yourself but us as well. Because when you come to us in that state and you want us to give you some treatment that is quick and crisp and helps you, live a healthy life and keep your baby safe, that is sometimes not possible. So the screening is very important, and contrary to the popular opinion that breast cancer is not a disease that is going to manifest in pregnancy, is absolutely wrong.
All right, ma'am. Okay, so one interesting thing that everyone wonders is that even after the completion of the treatment for breast cancer, is it possible that it can still recur?
Yes, just like all other cancers in the body, because you've gotten rid of it at one point of time, but you have to make sure that your body doesn't start making those cells again. And for that matter, we keep the patient on our strict follow-ups, at least for the first 2 years in their life. They have to come visit us every 6 months or 3 months, depending on what your surgeon recommends or what your oncologist recommends. And similarly, you have to make sure that you keep doing the self-examinations. Even on the scar tissue, you have to make sure that there's no lump that is visible or palpable. So yes, there are chances that the cancer may recur depending upon the form of the cancer that you have.
All right, ma'am. Okay, so now that we've discussed the whole journey from diagnosis to treatment as well as the risk factors for breast cancer, one thing that I wonder and everyone else wonders as well, and this is actually one of the main themes of our the title of our fireside chat as well, is that what roles do family and friends have in the psychological support and counseling of the patient, especially when there is the initial stage of trauma, and when during treatment undergoing treatment is another dilemma. So how important is that, and how important is to let them believe that they're not alone in this?
I am very happy with this question because this is one of the few questions that I'm here to answer. So, just like you've seen, we live in a country which is underdeveloped. Most females, I mean, almost all of them, except a few, are dependent on their, the male members of the family, financially, emotionally, in all forms and sorts. And if you don't support them to pick up to muster up the courage and go see a doctor, and then you take the treatment, and then you get rid of it, and then you stay on the follow-ups, she's not going to go, because she's going to ask you for everything at every step during the treatment, the diagnosis process, the rehabilitation process that is going to take place once the treatment is over. She would need your support. And same is with the friends and the family and the extended family as well, because we have such good family support system here in Pakistan. So we should make the most out of it. We should urge the friends to make sure that all of your friends are doing self-examination. You can keep asking them. You can ask your mothers at home. You can ask your sisters. You can make sure that if any one of them, they feel that there is some abnormality, something that is not normal, what they've never experienced before, you can take them to a doctor with you. Because our women, they do need support more than the women in any other part of the world, because they're not financially independent. They cannot go see a doctor on their own. They probably, half of them cannot drive. So they would need your support at each and every step. So I cannot put emphasis on this any further, that this is the most important thing, that we must sensitize our population, that if your wife or your mother or your sister is telling you that there is some problem, please take her to the doctor before it is too late. Because if it is going to come to us in stage 4, we cannot do anything, and you are going to lose your mother or your grandmother or your sister, you know. By the end of the day, it is your family which is going to suffer. So I urge everyone who are, you know, listening and watching it, that if anyone from your family members come to you with any such complaints, please take them to the doctor. Don't take it as a stigma, and don't hesitate even if a male surgeon is available, because life takes precedence over all of these things.
That is absolutely true. Okay, so now we're moving towards the end of our fireside chat. The last question that I would like to ask you is that what methods can be utilized to increase public awareness of breast cancer among the masses, as well as the social stigma that
So we have
surrounds it?
such good social connections nowadays. We have social media nowadays that was not there in the you know, previous times. So I recommend everyone, you know, first of all, you sit down on your dinner table and you make sure just right before it is served, you ask all the females of your family member, are they healthy, is there anything that they need to talk about. They can open up to you. That is where you, because it begins at home, you know, that is where you bring the change, where you're capable of bringing the change. And then you can, you know, there are lots of breast clinics available, lots of female surgeons now available here as well, so you can take your female members to those surgeons as well, get themselves examined. Similarly, you make sure all of these awareness campaigns, you go and attend them, you listen to them. You know, you ask questions, you can be anonymous on social media and ask whatever you want to ask. And then, you know, nothing, you know, can unfortunately replace your visit to a doctor. You have to visit a doctor if there is something that is bothering you, if there is something that you think needs to be addressed. Go see a doctor, preferably a surgeon, and they can help you in the treatment, knowing that this is completely curable. You go to a surgeon, get yourself treated, and live a healthy, happy, and a productive life in a country like ours where we need healthier women.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. This was indeed a very interactive and a very productive session. And even I got to learn some very interesting things about breast cancer, and I'm sure the people who saw it would learn from it as well. Thank you again for taking time out of your busy
I am
routine.
really happy, and I'm looking forward to see stronger women make stronger Pakistan, inshallah.
Inshallah, ma'am. So, with that, we end our fireside chat. Thank you for listening. Allah Hafiz.